Hi everyone! Welcome to Souped-Up Recipes. Today we are making the most popular breakfast in Henan province, 胡辣汤. Tang means soup. Hu is the first character of peppercorns in Chinese. La means hot or spicy. This dish is famous for its outstanding peppery flavor and a lasting complex spice aroma. The soup is thick, creamy, and warm, perfect for winter. Let's get started. I will show you a traditional method of how we separate the wheat starch and gluten. It's a time-consuming process called 洗面巾, which means washing the gluten. Not that many people do it this way anymore, but it's always good to know how things are traditionally done. And I will talk about the shortcut later if you don't have time to do this, so don't worry about it. In a KitchenAid mixing bowl, add 300 grams of bread flour and 175 grams of water. Use the hook to give a pre-mix before you run the machine. You can knead the dough by hand, which is not that difficult, but since I have a KitchenAid, why not use it? Let it run at low speed for 8 to 10 minutes. When it's done kneading, it should look like this. Roughly shape it into a round ball. Cover it, let it rest for 30 minutes. This will give the dough enough time to allow the proteins to bond with each other. 30 minutes later, take the dough out and put it into a bowl that is filled with water. Start pressing and stretching the dough under the water. Fold it in half. Keep pressing and stretching. You just repeat that. As the water gets cloudy, you will see some strings appearing on the surface of the dough. It looks kind of like a network. That is gluten. All the wheat starch was in between these strings, so you just do your best to wash the starch off. Now the dough looks like a piece of cloth. Keep rubbing and rinsing it gently as you are hand washing a delicate cloth. By the way, I'm using bread flour today because it contains a higher percentage of gluten. All-purpose flour will also work, but you might get a bit less gluten out of it, which is totally fine. After 10 minutes of non-stop washing, you will have a piece of gluten and a big batch of starch water. Pour the starch water into a big bowl to collect it. Use a sieve to catch any small gluten bits. Continue to wash the gluten with a little more water several times until the water becomes clear. Soak the gluten so it doesn't dry out. Let the starch water sit for at least 6 hours to allow the starch to sink to the bottom. I made this batch yesterday so I can show you the difference. You see how the starch and the water is separating? You just pour the top liquid out carefully. We will use this wheat starch to thicken the soup later, and we'll cook the wheat gluten in the soup as a topping. I understand this is time-consuming, so if you want a shortcut, you can buy the wheat starch and the wheat gluten online or in the store. I will link the product in the description. If you want a gluten-free option, you can use cornstarch to replace the wheat starch and use tofu sheets to replace the wheat gluten, or just simply skip the wheat gluten altogether. Okay, let's put this aside and we will move on to the beef stock. I got here 1.5 pounds of beef ribs and 2 pounds of beef neck. You can use other cuts, but make sure you get something that's 50% bone and 50% meat. The bone is going to help us to enrich the stock, and we need the meat to make the soup later. We will blanch the beef first. Fill a pot with water and add your beef. Cover it, turn the heat to high and bring it to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, skim off the foamy scum by using a fine sieve. Take the beef out. I prefer my broth to come out clean and clear, so I'm going to discard this water. It is optional, you can keep it if you want. Wash the pot, then add the beef back in. Pour in 2.5 liters of boiling hot water. Turn the heat to the lowest and let it simmer for 2.5 hours. While the beef is simmering, we can prepare other ingredients that we want to put into the soup. Technically, you can use whatever you like, but I want to introduce some classic items so you can recreate this local flavor. 60 grams of raw peanut. 25 grams of dried daylily flower. It is also known as dried lily buds or golden needles. It has a unique woody, earthy aroma. 18 grams of dried kelp. It's a large, leafy brown seaweed. You can buy it in almost any Asian market because Chinese, Japanese, and Korean love to cook with kelp. 10 grams of dried wood ear fungus. It is also known as black fungus and jelly ear. It gives a nice crunchy texture, which I really like. 85 grams of sweet potato starch noodles. Soak them all for 2 hours or until they are fully rehydrated. The peanut that I'm using has the skin on. Optionally, I will rub it off and discard it, as it brings a slight beany taste. If you can find skinless peanut, that would be even better. You don't need to do anything to the dried daylily. Just drain it and set it aside. Rinse the kelp a little bit because it is quite slippery. Cut the kelp into 2-inch long strips. Slice the wood ear fungus thinly. I only used 10 grams of dried forms, but the volume became so much bigger once rehydrated. Cut the sweet potato starch noodles into 2-inch long pieces. I put all the product links in the description. You can check them out later. Also, it is okay to use other ingredients if you don't have access to these Chinese products. Julienne cabbage, carrot, tofu, mushroom, rice noodles will also do well in this recipe. Next, we will make a spice powder, which is the key of hula tang. As the name suggested, this soup is heavily seasoned with lots of peppercorns. In a cast iron skillet, add 2.5 teaspoons of white pepper, 2.5 teaspoons of black pepper, 3 pieces of pepper longan, aka long pepper. It's a flowering vine in the family Pepperaceae. It has a taste similar to black and white pepper, but much hotter. These 3 ingredients provide the heat for this recipe. Continue by adding 1.5 teaspoons of Sichuan peppercorns, 1/4 teaspoon of fennel seed, half of a star anise, a small piece of cinnamon stick, 1/8 of a nutmeg, 1 piece of Angelica daharica root. It's a traditional Chinese medicine called baizhi. 2 pieces of licorice root. It has a strong sweet taste. The Chinese name is gancao. 1 Amomum velocum pod. It's a plant in the ginger family. We call it sharen. 1/4 of a black cardamom. 2 cloves. 1 white cardamom. All these spices together provides a lasting aroma, which is the character of this soup. Some people believe that it has lots of health benefits, but there aren't any studies about it. That does look like a lot of spices and it is hard to find them. So if you miss one or two, it's fine. You will not ruin the dish, but the fragrance will be a bit different. Just in case you don't know where to buy them, I'll link all of them in the description. Toast all the spices on low heat for 3 to 5 minutes, or until fragrant. For some of these spices, I gave very small measurements such as half, a quarter, or 1/8 of a piece. That is because the amount that I make is for one pot of soup. If you try this recipe and you love it, you can double or triple the measurements and make a bigger batch. So next time you don't need to go through all this work. Put the spices in a bowl, let it cool a little bit. Transfer them into a grinder and blend everything finely. Let it go through a sieve to get rid of any stubborn pieces. Last, I will add 1 teaspoon of ginger powder. Stir to mix and set it aside. By now, the beef stock should be ready. It looks rich and flavorful. The beef is full of bone tender, which is perfect. Take them all out. Add in the peanut because it takes a little longer to cook compared to other ingredients. Turn the heat back on low. While the peanut is cooking, we can remove all the beef bones. Use forks to shred the meat. You might find some small bits of bones while shredding, just discard them. Put the shredded meat back into the broth. Adding 3 tablespoons of diced scallion, 1½ tablespoon of diced garlic, and ½ tablespoon of finely minced ginger. Give it a stir. Keep cooking it on low heat. This is the gluten. Stretch and rip it into small little pieces, then put it in the soup. If you don't want to rip it by hand, you can use a knife to cut it. Continue by adding the rehydrated daylily, kelp, wood ear fungus, and the sweet potato starch noodles. Next, we will season the soup with some salt, 3 tablespoons of soy sauce, and ½ tablespoon of dark soy sauce. Give it a taste to adjust the flavor. I used 1 tablespoon plus ½ teaspoon of salt in total. Take a little bit of the broth and use it to dissolve the spice powder. Mix it into the soup. I did use all the spice powder because I like the strong and heavy flavor, but if this is the first time you are making this dish, you should add it little by little to make sure it fits your taste. Bring out the starch water. Get a whisk to stir until all the starch is well mixed. Add it into the soup little by little to thicken it up. I used about 1 cup plus a quarter cup of the starch water in total. This is the texture that you are looking for, super thick like a gravy. Top it with some diced cilantro If you like it to be spicier, you can drizzle in a little hot chili oil. This soup is commonly accompanied by deep-fried dough stick, aka 油条. You can cut them into bite-sized pieces and soak them into the soup. In Henan province, local people will eat this as breakfast like every day. To me, it's definitely a winter warmer, better than a goose down jacket. Because every time I eat it, I can just feel the heat building up all over my body. I hope you give this a try soon. If you did, leave me a comment, let me know how it goes. As always, don't forget to check the description where you can find all the links, including the printable recipe, the related videos, the purchase link for special ingredients if you don't know where to buy them, or the tools that I used in this video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!